Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers, it has become part of everyday operations. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution helps you catch income, identity, and trade-in fraud in real time without slowing down the sale. Stop fraud. Keep deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Canada fires back with a massive counter-tariff package targeting U.S. goods. Jeep is heading back to China, and this time going electric. And Land Rover is pumping the brakes on one of its most iconic models. Plus, AlixPartners Soumya Sen on what Ford's new Apple Maps deal really means for the race to build the software-defined vehicle.
The brand is still belonging to the automaker, but the brain is coming from the big tech to accelerate the development and release of these features.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Canada is hitting back hard on U.S. tariffs. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced dollar-for-dollar counter tariffs on American goods. They double existing levies on U.S. steel and aluminum to 50% and add new 50% tariffs on furniture, clothing, and electronics. The measures cover about $20 billion in annual U.S. imports and take effect September 8th. Carney said U.S. officials were aiming to destroy key Canadian industries after trade talks collapsed Friday. Canada also unveiled roughly $5.4 billion in support for businesses caught in the crossfire. Jeep is bringing production back to China and going electric in the process. Stellantis announced a new $1.2 billion joint venture with Dongfeng Motor Group to restart Jeep production in China by 2027. It will develop electrified models for both local sales and, for the first time, global export. It's a strategic pivot after Jeep's China sales cratered from a peak of just over 200,000 vehicles in 2017 to roughly 20,000 in 2022, ending its previous partnership with GAC Group. JLR is delaying the new Land Rover Defender. The automaker pushed back a planned redesign by 2 years, bumping an all-electric version to the early 2030s. That's according to the Times of London. The move comes as JLR weighs uncertain EV demand, a soft Chinese luxury market, and U.S. import tariffs. The Defender is JLR's best-selling model, making up a third of sales between April and June. It's built in Slovakia and currently subject to a 15% U.S. tariff. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now is our own Paige Hodder, who covers retail for us at Automotive News. She's out today with a story on Group 1 Automotive's $1.3 billion deal to buy 10 Atlanta dealerships from Hennessy Automobile, and why analysts say the price tag is raising some flags. Paige, welcome to Daily Drive.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Paige, so the price Group 1 is paying works out to about 70% of the store's expected revenue, well above the typical 35 to 50% range. What's driving that premium?
So to get an exact answer, we'd have to have a peek behind the curtain, which we don't. So it's kind of hard to tell. But the experts I spoke to said, there's a chance that there were other bidders, someone else really interested in the stores, and that could have driven up the price. Or, someone high up at Hennessy could have decided, I want to retire, and this is how much I want to retire for. And, if they're willing to really stick to that price and Group 1 is interested, sometimes it's just what you got to pay.
Group 1 plans to sell off smaller stores to pay down half of the new debt. How much confidence do analysts have that that plan holds up?
I think a decent amount. So Group 1's general strategy is not to expand at all costs. They have been doing a lot of portfolio management, you could call it, in recent years. So they buy big stores in big markets, luxury stores in, populated areas, and then they sell off some of the smaller stores that are maybe further away from other dealerships or just not as profitable as kind of they would hope. So that's something they have a lot of experience with, cutting off some of the stores they're not so happy with. And they did say during earnings that they already have, some of those deals in the works already. I think analysts are a little nervous about, a significant amount of debt in general. Group 1 seems confident that they will meet that, half target, but that still leaves them with a chunk of new debt and puts them at a higher range of, their preferred amount of debt or, ratio to debt and, revenue and profits. And that means that they're just in a slightly more precarious situation. It's not the end of the world, but if the market takes a downturn, it could put a squeeze on things or make it more expensive to get more debt in the future if they needed to for some reason.
Interesting stuff. Paige, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Coming up, Ford bets on Apple Maps for its next generation vehicles. AlixPartners Soumya Sen talks about what it signals about where the industry's software-defined race is headed. That's next on Daily Drive.
Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers. It has become part of everyday operations. According to Experian Automotive, nearly 9 out of 10 dealers say fraud is a top concern, and 70% say it's on the rise. We're talking about real deals slipping through, costing dealerships $10,000, even $20,000 per incident. And it's not just one type of fraud. You've got forged income documents, fabricated salaries, synthetic identities, even trade-in scams. The worst part, catching fraud often slows everything down, adding friction to deals and frustrating legitimate customers. That's where Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution comes in. It's designed specifically for dealers, helping you quickly detect income, identity, and trade-in ownership before it hits your bottom line. No guesswork, no unnecessary delays, just faster, more consistent verification so you can protect your profits while keeping the buying experience smooth. Because the goal isn't just to stop fraud, it's to keep good deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect. No more. Risk less. Sell smarter.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Ford recently announced that Apple Maps would be embedded directly into vehicles built on its new UEV platform, arriving in 2027. It's the latest sign that automakers are turning to big tech partnerships to accelerate the software-defined vehicle transition and catch up with innovation coming out of China. Soumya Sen is Senior Vice President in the Automotive and Industrial Practice at AlixPartners. He talked with our own Molly Boygon about what the Ford-Apple deal signals for the industry, how the mapping landscape is shifting as tech giants move in on incumbents like Here and TomTom, and whether we're any closer to the leap from Level 2 to Level 3 autonomy. Here's a piece of that conversation.
Soumya Sen, Senior Vice President in the Automotive and Industrial Practice at AlixPartners. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Apple and Ford have announced that Apple Maps will be embedded directly into vehicles built on the Ford UEV platform, which is arriving in 2027. What is the relevance of this announcement? Why is it important or interesting or revealing that Ford is partnering with Apple Maps and using their software development kit?
So we have seen many such announcements come up in the recent years, and this being particularly about the Apple Maps. Why this is relevant now is because as we see the shift of focus within the auto industry from EVs rather to now SDVs or AIDVs, all automakers are trying to catch up to how the Chinese market is leading in innovation and technology, and B, they are trying to increase their capabilities and competencies very rapidly. Now, having granted that many of these in-house efforts have not really surfaced or prevailed over the last few years, the shift we clearly are seeing is going towards partnerships, and this is one of those that is being announced. And Ford is not, this is not the first time they've announced some tech partnership. They've done that similarly for Sync way back in the days with Microsoft. bring that towards their infotainment services and offerings. So, in my opinion, this partnership will help accelerate their not only the offering for the end customer, but also development of their autonomous technologies, which we are all anticipating as we have seen overall the market trying to grow into it, trying to go towards L3 autonomy and so forth.
I see. So this is sort of part of a larger industry effort to accelerate the SDV transition, catch up with the Chinese, and so this is part of a larger trend of automakers partnering with other companies to kind of make that happen.
Correct. Yes.
And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of those partners and the differences between them. So my understanding is you have some of the tech companies that are entering increasingly the automotive mapping space, so Google and Apple. You also have some of the incumbents like Here and TomTom. And what are kind of the differences between those categories and why OEMs are partnering with different companies on different things?
On the maps example, what we are seeing is that this is not just about offering static HD maps into the vehicle anymore, right? As we mentioned in the beginning, this is part of both enabling autonomous driving and other offerings and capabilities, but also for data to be provided back to these tech players and partners to improve their offerings itself. So that level of partnership is, I think, what's being provided and most attractive, especially as we have now, as an industry, also entered the AI race of trying to offer AI-enabled capabilities and services even within the vehicle.
I remember one of the recent CarPlay announcements ruffling a lot of feathers because the display was going to extend from the central infotainment display over to the instrument cluster, and there was a lot of concern about this, and to what extent are we going to allow the big tech companies into the cockpit? And I understand that that's a smartphone mirroring example, and this and the other partnerships that you're talking about, there's a lot more integration happening. It's software development. It's not just a smartphone mirroring. But I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how much you think automaker attitudes toward big tech companies have changed. Do you think that there's a greater willingness to collaborate? Do you think it's about the same? How do you see this having developed over the last, let's say, 5 years or so?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think previously, as you rightly pointed, that announcement of having Apple control both the cluster and the infotainment was not taken well by the industry, as sort of perceived as the big tech trying to come in and control over. But now with the more collaborative efforts, and Apple is just announcing is just one of them. There's others around with, as the ones we know about Amazon and Stellantis, for example, trying to develop the Stella Brain together. These are now being more collaborative, where the brand is still belonging to the automaker, but the brain is coming from the big tech to accelerate the development and release of these features. Because what has been now realized over the last 5 years is you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it in silo. To do everything in-house and still compete and win in the marketplace would be a very difficult thing for anybody alone. So partnerships and strategic partnerships, I should say, are becoming more and more prevalent here, which is now, changing the market landscape of how do tier ones fit in, how do tier twos fit in, and big tech's role within all of this.
I also understand that the part of the core incumbent offering historically was the centimeter level accuracy for HD maps for autonomy, a level of detail and industry understanding, I guess, that allowed that further level of autonomy. And at the same time, my sense is that the increasing sophistication and use of AI is raising questions about whether HD maps are actually necessary for autonomy. First of all, I just want to sort of gut check that with you. Is that your understanding as well? Is there a conversation happening around the utility of HD maps for autonomy? And how do you think that's going to shake out? Do you think that that's necessary, or do you think that ADAS maps with the use of AI will suffice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think previously, as you rightly pointed, that announcement of having Apple control both the cluster and the infotainment was pretty was not taken well by the industry, as the ones we know about Amazon and Stellantis, for example, trying to develop the Stella Brain together. Those are now being more collaborative, where the brand is still belonging to the automaker, but the brain is coming from the big tech to accelerate the development and release of these features. Because what has been now realized over the last 5 years is you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it in silo. I think HD maps will still be necessary for the level of autonomy and the level of different capabilities of the self-driving car that we want to offer, not just in zoned highways, hub to hub, but even in more rural areas or smaller city roads, etc. So I think HD maps is definitely needed, but that combined with the power of AI in both autonomous predictions and driving capabilities and the brain itself will certainly enhance and like I said, will help get over this stalling of what we've seen in autonomous driving offerings. Right, we have seen L2, L2 plus, but we haven't really seen the leap made in, at least on the western side, from L2 to L3, and perhaps this is what tighter collaboration and integration will help the industry and the end customer.
Soumya Sen, Senior Vice President in the Automotive and Industrial Practice at AlixPartners, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Soumya Sen spoke with our own Molly Boygan. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to our own Paige Hodder and Jan Gian for their reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Nick Gibbs of our sibling publication, Automotive News Europe. You can get the latest news on U.S.-Canada trade, dealership buy sales, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.